Hello, and welcome to the AARP New Jersey Fraud Facebook Friday. We're back this summer to teach you how to protect yourself and your loved ones from another specific type of fraud. I'm Val Gallagher, an AARP New Jersey volunteer and your host for today's conversation. We're now in a completely digital age. Have you ever clicked on an advertisement online or on social media and get added to a group chat focusing on investments? Has someone contacted you through social media claiming they're a famous investment professional or an employee of a registered investment brokerage? This is only the beginning of becoming a victim to a stock tip scam on social media. Today, Sheldon Pollack, Associate Regional Director, Division of Enforcement for the New York office of the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, joins us to share information on social media and stock tip scams and how we can protect ourselves and our loved ones. The Securities and Exchange Commission, also known as the SEC, is a federal government agency that regulates the stock markets, protects investors from fraud, and ensures companies are honest about their finances. Sheldon, thank you so much for joining us today. Let's start with one of the most important questions. Can you define exactly what a stock tip scam is?
Sure. Well, first of all, it's great to be with you, Val, and the AARP, and we at the agency love partnering with this important organization and getting the word out and educating your members about stock fraud, stock scams. Our agency is 92 years old, and education for us is the first line of defense in protecting investors. And before I begin, I just have to make a disclaimer that these are my views in my official capacity as the associate director in the New York office, and they don't necessarily reflect the views of my commission or the members of the staff. So let's talk about a stock tip scam and sort of what that is. They might be stock recommendations that you would get through social media, ads posted online that you could click on, ads promising sort of a hot stock tip. We see more and more of it through what I would refer to as sort of text messages or WhatsApp. If you've ever been on your phone, your phone, and you've gotten a text message saying, hot tip, huge returns in this particular stock, click here to kind of access it. That's a really sort of developing area of how fraudsters work. Sometimes the ads say things like somebody famous, a celebrity is involved in this, or a person and a well-known person in finance with an Ivy League degree, or a famous CEO, and they've got this formula for picking the right stocks to get outsized returns. Usually they promise things that returns that sound just too good to be true. And, once you kind of click, there's a series of chats, and that usually is kind of a way that the fraudster tries to lure the victim into their trust. And they may show examples of things they've recommended in the past that have skyrocketed in value. And often they will get you to commit resources, money, to them, and then oftentimes the money disappears and goes overseas or in other places that it's very hard for us in the U.S. government to kind of protect people because the money is just simply out of the jurisdiction. It's gone at that point.
Wow.
So that's generally kind of a stock fraud scam or a stock tip scam.
Okay. And so I know I've personally gotten WhatsApp, messages
Right.
because I do have the app downloaded on my phone. It's how, I communicate in the other side of my world. And I will see, different scams come along, but I also know what to recognize. So far, nobody's tried to give me to invest in the
Right.
stock market, but I don't think it's because I'm of age yet. They're not targeting me in that way.
Right.
So if somebody, if an older adult doesn't have the WhatsApp app downloaded onto their phone, could they still get a text message with a link directly to WhatsApp to have the conversation?
Totally. That's incredibly possible, or it could be through a Facebook link or a Facebook ad or a chat within Facebook or one of the social media platforms. And I think as a really strong general rule, investors should never make investment decisions based on information from social media platforms or apps. You know, you may gather information. There may be a news link to like a Bloomberg article or a New York, Wall Street Journal article, and you may be gathering and doing some research. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, a social media targeted ad or message. That's where you really have to be careful and thoughtful.
Okay. Well, I mean, listen, it's interesting information. It never ceases to amaze me what kind of great lengths these scammers will go
Right.
to. I always say if they only put that amount of energy into doing something good, the world would look a lot different. So Sheldon, what do you commonly see criminals use on social media to successfully execute these scams? There's too many S words here.
Well, I mean, there's a couple of ways they work, and there's no one size fits all, and it makes it challenging, for us in the regulatory side of the house to kind of keep track of things. But there's some general sort of themes that I would say. One thing that they do is they may have control of a stock. You've never heard of this stock. It's a small, what we would call a penny stock or a small cap stock. It trades very inexpensively, and they have control, and they start spreading false information, rumors. This is the next big Tesla. This is the next big IBM. This is the next big thing. And it's get in on the ground floor when it's 5, 10, 15 cents, right? And people sort of look at that. And the problem is that the fraudsters have control of what we would call the float, or all of the stock shares. And they're generating these rumors and selling into people thinking, oh, I want to buy into the next Tesla, or I want to buy into the next IBM. How do I do that? So they buy these things and they continue to move the price up. And then when it turns out that the inventory is gone and actually these rumors are just kind of rumors, the bottom drops out of the stock. We call those pump and dump scams. That's the term of art in our industry. The share price gets pumped up by the fraudsters using false and misleading statements. And then there's a buying frenzy that happens. And then the shares are dumped by the fraudsters into that buying frenzy. And they make all the money, and the investors are left holding the bag. So that's a kind of common sort of stock fraud. And we've, at the SEC in the last year or so, we have the ability to stop trading, to halt trading, to prevent a stock from trading in the markets. We've done that on 13 occasions with these kind of small cap Asia-based companies. And again, I can't sort of over say it, but you should never make investment decisions, based solely on information you get from a text or a chat or something like that, because it's a recipe for trouble. But that's a typical example. The pump and dump scams, and we've seen others now. Sadly, artificial intelligence. Val, I know you hear that word a lot, right? AI.
Yep.
Artificial intelligence has the ability to create websites, fake websites, very quickly and very inexpensively for a fraudster. So you get a link and you go to this website, this platform, and it looks like a real brokerage firm, like a real firm. Guess what? It's fake. And eventually, maybe you give some money and they show you're making a little bit of money. They may lure you into that. And then next thing is you go to get your money out and they say, oh, you need to pay extra money for taxes, or you need to pay extra to get the money out. So you pay more money into it and the money's gone. It's out of the jurisdiction. So there's a lot of different ways we see stock frauds happening, but those are some of the common ones. And again, really staying away from the social media to make investment decisions is something that we really encourage investors, and particularly your listeners, to
Yeah.
follow.
And, it's interesting because I tell people all the time, and it doesn't matter if they're, 72 or they're 22 or anything in between. If it seems too good to be true and it
Totally.
seems like it's easy, it's probably a scam. There's probably a almost inevitably a catch 22, as I like to say.
Yep.
You want to stop. Don't get lured in. Don't fall for that. Have a conversation with your spouse, have a conversation with your children, have a conversation with a friend, have a conversation with an
Totally.
attorney. I mean, have a conversation with somebody before you just jump in. So that's, wise advice of, don't make an investment decision based on, social media and those types of apps.
Yeah,
So
that's a great point, Val. And I would direct people, we have a special website for people to use. It's called investor.gov. It's real easy to remember.
okay.
Investor.gov. And if you want, you can put in the name of the person you're supposedly transacting with and get information about that person. And so I think it's always good, as you say, talk to your spouse, your children, your friends and colleagues, people that are, in the know, and always go to investor.gov to look up and see if in fact this person is who they say they are.
Yeah, and maybe like this just popped into my head. I understand that not everybody has a financial advisor or a CPA, somebody along that line. But if they do, that would be probably even my first conversation before I talk to my spouse or my adult children. Wait a second. Is this a good idea? Should I do this?
Right,
Is this going to
right.
net me, is this going to net me what I think it's going to net me? And they're, obviously I'm sure they're alarmed and alerted to these types of scams as well.
Yeah, no, undoubtedly,
Okay.
undoubtedly.
So you mentioned something about investor.gov and going there and putting the individual's names. So here's my next question. What are some ways that these fraudsters can conceal their identities to lure us into their scam web, as I would call it?
Yeah, I mean, people go to great lengths to hide their identities and to conceal who they really are. And they become more sophisticated, as I mentioned, artificial intelligence and this AI. There's a lot of promising good that the technology has, but there's also a lot of means for fraud and for other things. They create fake websites, they use a fake logo, a fake photo, um, or they make impersonate a real website, a real name, like, you think you're dealing with ABC firm, and actually they just made a fake website that says ABC on it, and that's a real concern. Um, they may call you from a spoofed phone number, so you may get a call and it may say, Goldman Sachs, as an investment bank, obviously,
Yep.
or a brokerage firm. And so you would think, oh, I'm getting a call from somebody at Goldman Sachs, but actually they've faked that. That's a spoof or a fake number. They can disguise their identities using voice changing software. So when they call you, it makes it sound like somebody else, a messaging service, and they can use AI to kind of generate recordings like that. And as you said, Val, I think if it sounds good to be true, it likely is. And you just gotta kind of steer away from those social media based ads and the lure of high returns, because you can really get sucked in. And we've seen it over the years. The earlier scams were they would get clips of individuals on the web of a professional looking person, and they'd say, "This is Bob Smith, the head of investment research," and oh, that guy looks like a very serious, thoughtful finance person, in the suit and everything, and the Wall Street in the background. Turns out Bob Smith is a clip, and when you put that image into the Google reverse engine search, it comes up like in 100 different places. It's not really really not Bob Smith, it's somebody else. And so that was like 10 years ago. It's just gotten more and more sophisticated now. I mean, with AI, you can generate an image of an investment professional looking person in a matter of seconds. So,
Yeah. Yeah. The only and I know this isn't a perfect isn't a perfect awareness, I guess. But I have seen on Facebook when somebody does post an AI image, I'm starting to notice that Facebook is picking up on it. And at the very top, so if it said Val Gallagher and I shared an image that I had created through AI, it will actually say AI up at the top. So
Right.
they're slowly starting to like be able to point out some of them, but there are still quite a few images that I personally see that if I didn't know any better, I'd think, oh, wow, look at that. And then I'm like, wait a
Right.
minute. I don't know. Let me zoom in a little bit closer and see if that information is correct. But I'm going to do my own due diligence. So, how can individuals protect themselves if they've become a victim of these types of scams?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, you want to first independently verify that you're talking to a investment professional at a registered firm. What do I mean by that? Like, well, at the SEC, if you want to sell securities, you have to be either registered with what we would call FINRA, they're a brokerage organization, but they have to have like paperwork filed somewhere that says this is somebody who sells securities to the public. And so make sure you're dealing with a licensed professional. You wouldn't, if you had a leaky sink, you'd want to call a plumber. You'd want them to have probably a license, right? And so, same thing with your investments. Be careful. Make sure you're dealing with. So go to that investor.gov web page. Check out your investment professional. It's in like bold and all caps. You click in that, and you can type down the name of the firm or the individual that you're dealing with, and make sure you're dealing with an actual person and a professional that's registered. And don't use, if they provide you with website information, or they say, oh, here's the link to our website, or here's our email, don't use that information because often it can be spoofed and faked. We've seen that numerous times before. And so you have to be really careful about that. And don't rely on contact information. Like if you get added to like some kind of messaging forum. So on WhatsApp, we see this a lot where you get suddenly added into a chat of people who are talking about investments. And they'll say, oh, this is my guy. He's so good. And I've made so much money with him. And of course, it's just bad actors saying those things. Don't rely on the contact information that are in the app. What's the name of the person? Where are they? And you can always independently verify. You could call the firm that they purport to be with on your own. Is this person, and most likely the answer is going to be no. I would always be careful if you're communicating with someone through an encrypted messaging app. So like that's the WhatsApp, or they have an email address you're not familiar with, you haven't seen. Be careful of that stuff. Be skeptical if the person says they're not going to provide you a phone number, or they don't want to talk to you on the phone, or they don't want to do a video chat with you. All those things, any kind of red flags that you kind of think, this sounds so funny. I mean, trust your instincts, trust yourself, because it likely, as you say, Val, if it sounds too good to be true, it surely is.
Yeah. So I thought of something when you were talking about, don't click on the encrypted links, be
Hmm.
careful of emails. Great advice. If they won't get on the phone with you, if they won't do a Google Meet or a Zoom or some type of
Yep.
video, call, those are red flags. If somebody clicks on a link, let's say, okay, they're on their computer, like we're on our computers right now. They
Right.
click a link through a messaging app or an email or whatever, and obviously it's going out to those fraudsters. Could those fraudsters through that link potentially gain access to that individual's computer and also gain access to their login, let's just say banking, right? For people who do online banking, would those fraudsters also potentially gain access to somebody's online bank accounts if that link is clicked?
Yeah, I mean, you have to be really careful with clicking any kind of link out there in those message boards or forums, whatever you do. And especially if you click the link and then your computer gives you that kind of like, such and such wants access to your computer or something like that, and you think, oh yeah, click, and suddenly, yeah, it's exposed. And we've seen password harvesting scams and things like that where people get access to other folks' brokerage accounts. So like, your Fidelity account, Val, or your account at Vanguard, and suddenly like they've got your password and they're making trades in it, and they've already changed the contact information. So you're not even getting alerts of that, and it's really careful. So what we always tell folks is if you have an account, a brokerage account, um, and you have online access, you should be checking it periodically to just make sure that everything looks and it's is of what you expect it to be. That suddenly $100,000 hasn't transferred somewhere.
Sheesh. So for individuals who think they have become a victim, of these types of scams, where do they go to report it?
So we would encourage people to report to us. But the best source of information for us when we build cases in the enforcement. So I'm in the enforcement division. We try to go after the fraudsters. That's our kind of primary goal, is to protect investors. And as I mentioned, early detection and reporting is the best thing we can do. So the absolute best is doing these kinds of talks, right? So we can prevent people from getting scammed in the first place. But to the extent people are experiencing a scam, they should go to the SEC's website, so sec.gov, and report it. And there's a reporting form under the TC, they call it TCR, tips, complaints, and referrals. So sec.gov/TCR. Go there, great place to report. The other place is to call us. We have a hotline, and that number, Val, is 800-732-0330. So it's 800-732-0330. And if you also are kind of curious, like, is this like maybe a scam? I'm not quite sure. That website for investors that we have, investor.gov, we list bulletins and alerts and investor education. It's a wealth of resources for people to learn about stock frauds. You and I can't cover all the various permutations, and the fraudsters get smarter each year. It gets more and more complex and hard to discern, what's real and what's not. And so what I tell people is go to investor.gov, because there's a great wealth of information there for folks to kind of understand what we're seeing.
Yeah, perfect. That's excellent. And then, Sheldon, can you share your closing thoughts, for our viewers?
Sure, I'm happy to. Again, it's really great to be with you. And as I started at the beginning, is like we rely on folks in the public to report to us when they see things. So if you see something, say something, reach out to us and tell us about it, because it's the best way we can develop our record and hopefully stop fraudster while the money is still in the United States, still within our jurisdiction. So ask questions and find out answers, and go check the answers out. Fraudsters rely on the fact that many people don't bother to ask questions. They just, they don't bother to investigate what they're about to invest in. And it's not enough, to just kind of trust somebody. Ask questions. Be careful. What about this? What about this? How are you making the return of 17% when the stock market, generally 8 to 10% is the typical return on average? Savvy investors take time to do their own homework, talk to their friends. You mentioned this, Val, family members. And you work with a CPA. Talk to your CPA. Make sure you understand the investment and the risks, and never judge a person's integrity by how they sound, how they appear, how you find them. They could sound professional, they could sound polite. Fraudsters are trained. We've seen this, and the stock fraud scams. They have handbooks. These guys that are trained on how to get your trust and how to make you feel like you have to invest right away. This investment is closing right away. You've got to get in before I'm giving you this opportunity now. It's going to close in an hour. You have to, at high pressure sales tactics. Be wary of that. Con artists know that the appearance of this professionalism, this demeanor with manners that are polite, along with this hard sales pitch, can convince people. And that's really dangerous. Don't rush into any investment decision. Stay vigilant, be careful, think through things, and never, as I've said before, make investment decisions solely based on something you find on a social media platform or an app. I think those would be my closing thoughts, Val, and hopefully we can help your members stay vigilant, and invest wisely, and for their retirement and for their children and for the benefit of their families.
Yeah, it's very good information. Thank you, Sheldon. And I've been an advocate for older adults for how old's my older son? He's going to be 24. So, so almost November will be 24 years, as a matter of fact. I know it to the day and to the year. But I've been an advocate for our older adults for a very long time. And what I tell people all the time is there are tons of advocacy groups for children and pets, right?
Right.
However, there's not enough advocacy groups for older adults. And the one thing that they have that children and pets do not have is financial resources. And this is exactly what we're talking about. Somebody losing a good portion or all of the money they worked their entire life to build, for that retirement age, for that last half of their life, and it can be gone in a second. So thank you again so much for joining us today, Sheldon. I really appreciate it. And if you're concerned you've been scammed, you can reach a trained volunteer at the AARP Fraud Watch Network helpline at 877-908-3360. Again, that's 877-908-3360. Sorry about that, 3360. If you'd like more information and resources on fraud and scams from AARP New Jersey, please visit aarp.org/NJ fraud. Again, that's aarp.org/NJ fraud. If you're interested in learning more about free fun events, special offers, and the latest news from AARP, text the word yes, the number 2, email to 50757 to receive a one-time text message from AARP with a link to sign up for emails and learn about what AARP has to offer. Message and data rates may apply. We hope you learned something new today about how you can stay safe from fraud and scams. Please share what you've learned with your family and friends, both on and offline through various social media platforms. Thank you again and have a wonderful day.